Welcome to Everything is Fintech. We just tried our first intro and I had a lot of energy and it's been a long day and we're trying our second one now with Nicole, and we know each other well enough that she knows that I'm not going to have the same exact things to say the second time. But welcome to Everything is Fintech. I always forget to introduce myself, so I will say I'm Zach Anderson Pettit, VP of Fintech Strategy here at Money 2020. I just like to remind Nicole that I'm a VP, just on a regular basis.
By the way.
Thank you. I think you've told me that before, but I'll take it on air as well.
On the record.
Exactly. And we have the one, the only, the magnanimous Nicole Casperson in the house to discuss many things. Not that she knows what, because I gave her absolutely no heads up. But
it's truly impressive that I'm here.
I agree. Every time I get to see you, I feel that way.
Thank you.
Yeah,
well, thank you
definitely.
for having me.
Indeed. Before we get into the thing that you knew we would discuss, because you wrote a book, so we're going to talk about it.
Book.
How are you? And that kind of relates to you wrote a book. Like, how you doing on the other side of that?
Oh, so much better.
Yeah. Now that that's over.
I was just telling my co-founder in life and business, Anton, that I feel like I'm finally seeing joy in life again. That's about how intense writing a book is. You really have to mold yourself into a whole other human and dive into this project and give everything to it, right? And then on the other side, you kind of slowly start to be yourself again. Like, I don't know, I'm like, food has taste again, and I could smell the fresh air, and there's joy in my life again. I just feel like a sense of calm now that I've completed such a massive task. So I'm good. I'm really good.
That makes me so happy.
Yeah.
Like, as if for background, we are friends, and we had drinks. We had we had dinner a couple times. Like we were together during some of those times when you were writing, and whew,
it's mushy.
It was tough. It was tough. I mean, you were you, but you could definitely tell that you were focused elsewhere. And everything you just said, actually, like we're 4 weeks post Vegas show. I don't know time.
And 4 weeks post basically the book being out.
Yeah. So aligns in terms of like you do this thing and it takes absolutely everything out of you, and you even forget that you can find joy in this thing that you once thought would be your dream, and then you get far enough away from it that you're like, oh yeah, that's right. I do exist for a reason. Like, there's a reason I get out of bed.
Well, in the middle of writing it, you're so bogged down in it. And then, I just got back from my book tour, what I kind of called my launching book tour. I plan on going on another one next year.
Can we just pause on the fact that you just said that just
exactly
badass sentence? I just got done with my book tour, says Nicole Casperson.
I know.
Let's go. I love that.
Right, where we did 6 cities if I count New York.
I think if there's a city to count, I know you live here, but if there's a city to count, you still count it. Yeah.
Right, exactly. 6 cities, 4 weeks. Vegas is one of them at Money 2020. We did a book signing there, and then I did a couple other things there. But exactly, it's like on the other side now that I'm like, oh, I just had a book tour. Fintech is Fun won its first award. I gave LeVar Burton a copy of my book at this event I went to in LA, and that was pretty magical.
And you actually, I saw, I think on your Instagram or something, like, did you get to have like a little chat, or was it just like a sign and walk away?
I meet famous people. He's probably one of the most
I would hope so. If LeVar Burton was an asshole, the world should end.
Yeah, I know. He's a national treasure. He was wonderful. But to like give him a copy of my book, I had to like muster up the courage, kind of like think what I'm going to tell him. I was like, thank you for being a national treasure and for everything that you've done for literacy. Here's a copy of my book. It's about blah, 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 blah. Like, it's just you figure out what you're about to say. He's like, well, can you sign it for me? And I was like, oh, yes,
and that was,
sir.
That was fine.
So yeah, so these are the moments that happen after all of the blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah. So what inspired the blood, sweat, and tears? Because like you have a newsletter. Like maybe we should give it a little bit of background. What is Fintech is Femme?
Yes.
And then we'll get into like how that led to this thing that is sitting on the table and doesn't look light.
It is 360 pages. Specifically, it's around 90,000 words. It is not light. So for those that don't know me, Nicole Casperson, founder and CEO of Fintech is Femme. It's a media company and now a proper membership community. My subscriber base is 50,000, and it is largely made up of fintech professionals, founders, CEOs, investors, operators, people that you know, people that have been on the show. And And I started it about 3 years ago. We actually just had my 3-year anniversary of Fintech is Femme. So I write a newsletter. I host a podcast
It's
as
only
well.
been 3 years?
It's been 3 years. Yes,
No,
only.
I just said it's, only. That's
I
that's
know.
impressive in 3 years. Granted,
Thank you.
fintech is moving quickly and whatnot, but
yeah, with only just this last year, 2024 being the first year that I took full operational and creative ownership of the brand. So now it is fully mine. I am the owner of Fintech is Femme, which is very exciting. And I largely credit that to why we've seen so much growth this year. Now, next year, we're entering a new phase of growth with our membership community, and then really hosting a lot more events across the country. But the point of Fintech is Femme for me is to truly, like, my ultimate goal is to meet more women in this industry, and to bring in more founders, operators, CEOs, people that want to leverage the power of advanced technology to make our economy and our financial system more equitable. So that is essentially what my book is about. I tell that story twice a week in my newsletter.
Yeah.
Through different founders, different news stories, different things that I give the insights and information that my readers need to be able to play that role in the industry. And then the book is kind of a accumulation of all of that. You know, people ask me how long did it take to write it, and that can be kind of muddy because I did like 2 years of podcast interviews where I pulled a lot of the content from to write the book. 2 years of newsletter writing to pull from content for the book. And then, but the actual writing process, I probably did in about 4 months. Don't recommend that. If you're going to write a book, please don't do that. It's a little...
Was that I mean, it's like inside baseball, but was that a stipulation from the publisher?
No, I mean, a lot of it was my decision. The publisher did want to move
Just put
fast.
yourself in them.
Yeah, they want to move fast on this stuff.
Of course.
And I asked other authors, I was like, have you written a book in 4 to 6 months? And some were like, absolutely not. And then some were like, hell yeah, you can do it. So I don't know, I just went for it
because you're the hell yeah, you can do it
yeah,
type.
I'm that kind. Exactly.
You're that person.
So the book profiles 40 women in fintech who are all building different solutions that solve our economy's most pressing issues: student debt, climate change, healthcare, caregiving for mothers specifically and families. There's a number of different issues: wealth management, investing, you name it. A lot of small business fintech in this, I find as well. And their stories really weave in the personal narrative and how they use their personal stories to really dissect and open up where in the market they are uniquely positioned to build a business in. And that is how I built Fintech is Femme, was like, I saw a massive gap in media that needed to be filled as like a media professional and in fintech. So that's how I built my company. It's how all these women in the book built their company, but they do it in their own unique ways.
Right.
So the point is, if you can find a version in this book that you see for yourself, then you'll have the tools, right? You'll literally have a roadmap to follow to say, okay, like, I can build this, this, and this, or I should do it this way, or whatever kind of version of that business model looks like for you, there's probably a version in the book that you can relate to.
So you've put your blood, sweat, and tears, like you said, into this. And like I said before, we've been through a lot together, and I've seen some of what that is. It hasn't been painless. I could say that, even from the outside, it's seemed painful. Why fintech? Like there's so many different portions of the world where your talents could be applied and flourish in a way where, 50,000 is a lot of subscribers, but that's a lot of subscribers in fintech, right? That's not a lot of subscribers
on
for,
like a
for Glossier
scale.
or
Right.
I don't even know if that's a good example, but I was trying to reach over to the other side. But why this industry? What does it mean to you? Why are you so stuck on it? Why did you go through all this to write this?
I know, I love this question because I've been asked, exactly to your point, oh, Nicole, you could just focus on women empowerment, women in business, women leadership generally.
I actually hadn't even thought about that
right.
point.
I appreciate that you didn't ask me that. But when I do get asked that, or why fintech, for me, it would completely miss the point of what I'm doing if I wasn't doubling down on the fintech narrative. Fintech combines the two most powerful business sectors on the planet, finance and technology. It is literally the lifeblood of our economy. It is what makes the world go round. And fintech is an industry that fundamentally shapes the fabric of our society. Why would I not tackle that beast? That and not a lot of people are doing it, as you know. There's only so many Nicole and Zach's and creators in this space.
Yeah.
So it's a wide open opportunity. And then if you narrow down even further to then ensure that female entrepreneurs, people that want to build businesses, are seeing fintech as a worthwhile opportunity for that growth and to be entrepreneurs in, it's just like a no-brainer to me. So to remove fintech from this community, this media platform that I built, would be for it to cease to exist. Like it is fundamentally fintech. People, I've heard before someone describe like an event of mine as like a women's event, and it's really not. Nothing I've done has actually ever. Women's not even in the title. I mean, it's in the subtitle. But anyways, it's like not even.
Point taken.
Yeah, you know what I mean? The point is that it's not about women talking about being women because they're women. It's about talking about the industry from a lens that we don't typically hear from, so that we can do things differently and see what the result is, right? So that's why fintech, there's simply nothing more powerful than making money move, than fueling the economy, than and all of that. If you can fix finance for moms, if you can fix finance for women, you can fix finance for all of these groups that haven't historically had access to it, you can solve a lot of the world's problems.
100%.
So that's just that's my realm I've decided to tackle for the rest of my life.
And I think I agree. So I don't, we haven't talked since I got back from Singapore. So I went to Singapore for the first time. This was not like good for my health in any way, but I think it was 3 weeks after within the last month, Vegas finished and I went to Singapore. I think it was a week ago that I got back. And Singapore is a wildly developed nation, cleanest place I've ever been, and wild experience. But sitting in the office with the Money 2020 team talking about fintech in Asia generally has gotten me to this point where it's like, when's the last time you heard, other than when you and I sit around, or you and I and a small group of our friends sit around, when was the last time you actually had a conversation about fintech for good? Right? Because you just hit on something very specific in terms of solving, financial management for moms specifically, right? And then you get even more specific on solving for single moms or something like that, or single parent families even. It doesn't have to be a single mom. These are the problems we're solving. And it doesn't feel like we're running out of those problems in the US, but I feel like as you look across the world, you're like, my God, just a little bit of what we have here. If we took a little bit of the fintech energy in New York and took it to Cambodia, or took it to, what can happen in these emerging markets with a little bit more investment? And it's just like,
I had these same impacts when I went to India last year for the Women's World Banking Summit. And we were in Mumbai, and that entire experience is in the book. I had to write about it. And it's, I'm like, chapter.
You got to name the page,
pretty sure
or else
it's
you failed.
chapter 6 or 8. Anyway, I'm pretty sure it's chapter 6. Okay,
read the whole thing, and then you'll find out.
I read my audiobook 2 months ago, so I'm like, I haven't read my book in full in a couple months now. But anyways, is a whole section, and I titled it, making finance work worldwide. And I pull from the examples of Women's World Banking, but also some entrepreneurs in India who are developing those kinds of solutions. So, right, because here in America, they don't see, and by they, I'm saying traditional financial institutions, banks, right? They don't see the value in that kind of access when someone has such a little amount of money.
Or else fintech would not exist.
Right.
Right. If the banks were serving us.
Right. But if you times that by 180 million people, bam, those are massive deposits. That's massive money. Not to mention, and you probably learned this maybe while you're in Singapore, but those emerging markets, if you will, that's what we call them. You check those default rates when you provide microloans to those people. Those are 99% default rates. Like they're returning that.
Other way around.
Or sorry. Yes, my bad.
Yeah.
That's a 99% return.
The credit card default rates, the auto default rates, and the home loan default
basically
rates
zero.
in the US are so much higher than any of the microloans.
Right. So it's like,
yeah.
Who is doing it right?
Well,
I don't know.
The underwriting abilities are completely different because you're taking into account someone's everything. Not
Right.
like there's not even a good way to say the sentence I was about to say, but you take into account everything. You take into account how often, is this phone that we know is theirs is going to the market? How
Right.
often is this happening?
The cellular data
it's
as
wild.
alternative data is huge, and that's really what Tala does, who has a massive section in the book, Shivani Sarora, the founder and CEO of Tala. And yeah, she's in Kenya, Mexico, the Philippines, India.
Yep.
And I might be missing a few more. But
but that's the fact that as I will say, as an American, and that was one of my things in Singapore, is I could barely tell you, like, if you gave me a blank United States map, I could barely do it. I probably couldn't do it. Like, I got Missouri because that's where I live, and then I got California. I got the corners nailed.
Yeah.
But like, as soon as you go outside of there, based on our school system, unless you went to somewhere I didn't go, like, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Like, like the idea of even like, we know about Vietnam because there was a war there, right? We know about Korea because there was a war. Like, we
our
don't know
educational
much.
system isn't so great.
It's
I've
terrible.
had to do a lot of makeup work in my adulthood because I went to school in Texas.
If you're not an adult nerd doing the makeup work, like, you don't have a grasp of the globe in any way, shape, or form at all.
Right. I mean, oh gosh, it's why we need to travel more.
Entirely.
As a species in general.
Yes, yeah. So speaking of traveling more and species, I suppose, is also a good transition. What are it's actually a terrible transition, but
these are great transitions.
They're all great transitions, Nicole, every single one of them. We were actually having drinks and gyoza and listening to terrible karaoke about a month ago.
Yes,
and
one of my favorite bars.
We always enjoy it. And we were discussing like some of your favorite stories, some of the like top people that you were like most excited to interview. So basically, it's a softball of go. What was most interesting? What was most like kind of what shocked you the most? Or was like, who was the coolest to actually get to sit down with?
Oh my goodness, this is so hard. Everyone is so wonderful.
You can give the caveat before of
I'll give the caveat that everyone is so wonderful.
Right.
And probably because I'm about to host an event with them on Monday. But I'd say for me, a fangirl moment is definitely Sheila Lirio Marcello.
Okay.
She is the founder and former CEO of Care.com. So she's the first Asian American woman to take a company public.
A name like so few people know, but I'm 99% sure that they're on the NYSE, and that she was one of the times that I toured the NYSE. She was up on like they have like a 40-person wall of fame that they'll like kind of change over.
She's got to be on it.
She was on it at that point.
Yeah, and she's only the 7th woman in history to take a company public.
It's wild.
And for it to be, and she tells the story, but for it to be a tech company focusing on something like caregiving, right? A market that, first of all, is a $6 trillion market. And then, but at the time when she founded the company in 2004, and I think eventually launched it in 2006, no one was paying attention to that. And she is pretty open and honest about her, vulnerability around, okay, I'm a woman, I'm an immigrant woman from the Philippines, and I'm about to found a tech company that's focused on largely a female-centric issue, which is finding care. But she did it, like, with this level of conviction of, I just needed to prove this was possible so that others could see, right? That care, good, all of this stuff, right, is profitable business, which is a huge argument I made in the book as well.
I want to interrupt you there. So did you just gave a very significant preamble to that, making me feel like you had, like, why'd you have to explain that? Of course, there's a business there. And I guess the other thing is, as you were explaining it, is the reason that you partially explained that way because there was at some point a perception that it was like she was just doing women stuff for women, for women, but there is profit in that. Bringing me to the point of, like, does that overlap with Nicole Casperson at all? Because I think you get lumped into that sometimes, right? But like, you're talking about real shit.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's like you get, and this was my issue with traditional media, right? Like, to be fair, I don't know what we have like women's sections for in magazines. I'm like,
I think it's to sell ads so that people know it can be in the women's section.
Right, exactly. Well, right. Obviously, it's
the
for
only
money.
Answer.
Money. The answer to this is money.
Yeah.
The end. Podcast closed.
Yep.
Good show. No, but so the reason of the explanation is because she's shared some of that vulnerability. To me, it's also you know, you should see what it's like when I do go to events or I host events and it is largely women, especially and women in our industry. They just like flock to me. And in the Philippines, we call it chismis, but it just means like
So fun to say.
Chismis. It's like a word for it's really a word for gossip.
Okay.
But it really just means like they're telling me like their secrets, or like they're telling people, like love to tell me. As a journalist, what a dream. But it just gives me insight. Like it's just information I can calculate. And I share that because a lot of the information I'm hearing is women telling me what's really going on in the investor room, right? Like what's really going on when they pitch their company to an investor. What's really going on? What are the things that they're being told? And
they're not giving you the bullshit version that they give to a male VC,
just
or
so giving to like TechCrunch because they have to like have the right quote or whatever. They can tell me the reality, and then they trust and know that, you know, my North Star is very different than a traditional media outlet. I'm not trying to like scoop people. I'm trying to connect dots people don't typically connect and see.
Well, yeah, and if you scoop somebody, be like.
Am I gonna scoop Bloomberg? Like I'm not trying to do like or Reuters. Like who cares?
And you're like building a community. I don't know. I mean, there is one specific individual in our ecosystem that does that on a somewhat regular basis, and I love the man. But you know,
what kind of sketchy measures are you gonna go to do that? I don't know.
And bridges get burned when that happens too. Is the other thing, and this industry is small enough that it's like it's.
Oh yeah,
just,
we know things.
And is it for the good of the industry to do some of this stuff? You know, it's like
I don't know. I think that's these are like journalism questions to like to think about, right? Because if we're not honest about what's really going on, i.e., that's why I had to have that explanation. Like to your original question, I have to explain that.
You have to over-explain all the time.
All the time. I have to constantly push the narrative because I can't. If I just talk about these industries, these women as being a force for good, I don't know if people are going to open up their wallets for them, right? What they want, what an investor wants to see, which is fair. Like what an investor wants to see is, that's really great, that's good. Am I going to get a return? You know, am I going to get my money back? Am I going to get it back in millions, right? And the reality is yes, you literally will. So it's more fun to talk about like the good, I think, and the money at the same time. But what's cool about the women profiled in the book is, you know, and I say a standout is Laurel Taylor. She's the founder and CEO of Candidly, where she's focused on student debt and that giant issue. But she's just like ridiculously commercial, right? And so that's, I think, a key is that as you're building these companies that are meant to, you know, solve these massive issues in our economy and meant to make good happen and impact, if you will, is what that is often called, you do have to be like relentlessly commercial with it and find that avenue where you're going to get those checks. To the other side of, not every business needs to be a VC-backed business.
It feels like simultaneously, I was about to say it feels like VC is getting hard enough to raise that not every company will be that. Not like I think people are realizing that a lifestyle business is perfectly fine. Like maybe not fine, better. Yeah. Like you don't have a VC breathing down your neck. You're not expected 100x returns within like the next board meeting isn't something that's keeping you up at night. Like maybe there's a lot of advantages to it. Right. But the other side of my mouth,
I don't know if I like people ask me if I ever plan on raising and I'm like right now, no, like that's fine. I'm good.
Well, and with what you're building, like as soon as you start raising the editorial implications of, this last election was very interesting because of a lot of that, right? Like just even the post not endorsing anyone and Bezos owning it is a whole thing that we won't go into.
No, it's okay.
We won't go far into that.
We were talking journalism and media. Yeah.
And but it's just a media organization not taking a stance. We're in a point in life now where that's a stance. You know, it's anyways. It's a fascinating time to be alive, I guess is the punchline.
I remember when I used to work at trade publications, and I would always, me and a publisher can have a lot of fun together because I just like push and I would get off a call and a publisher would be like, oh, what'd they say? And I'd be like, oh, they said no, or let's say whatever, to like a rumor or a buzz or whatever. And they'd be like, oh man, too bad. And I'd be like, what are you talking about? That's the story. The story is that they said no, right. or that they didn't say anything.
Yeah,
that is a story.
No comment is comment. Comment says much. Says much.
Says a lot.
Yes.
And so, journalism 101 is like push, even if they say they won't talk about it. because then you at least have on the record that they're saying they're not going to talk about it. And then you as the interviewer don't look silly. And then, and actually the person looks more silly. But anyways, it's to the point of I have a much different view of what journalism should be doing for these niche industries.
And it's starting to do it. And I think we can leave. So. I think we can leave the Washington piece there. But even in that case, like, you know, there was I think a 25% drop in ratings from CNN on election night from the previous election to this one. So there's something happening in this, just like the internet exists world.
I mean, people are going to stop really caring about like the larger media conglomerates more and more as they have these kinds of exposures, right? Because they're always going to have this level of clout, and people are always going to care. The same way people like, they care about Forbes that are under 30 for a week, and then we don't care until the next year when it launches again.
Now that I'm over 30, I'm still upset that I never was.
I know, I never got it either, but it's okay because I'm over.
Good. I feel better now that you didn't either. Okay,
I know,
good.
I'm over 30. The insider baseball of that is I actually got reached out this year for it, and I'm 30.
Lied. What are they going to check? Are they going to check?
I really thought about lying. But don't lie, guys.
Don't. Yeah, sorry. I forgot we were recording. Ethics.
No
don't
lying.
Yeah, do not lie ever.
I didn't lie. I still filled out the form though. They're like, "Hey, you're." I did it just in case. They were like, "You're a candidate," and I was like, "Yay!"
Yeah.
I was like, filled out the form. I don't know. What if they were like, "This is honorary mentioned." It didn't happen.
No one has ever bent the truth in capitalism, so that would have been
or in media
ever. Okay, back to the book. So, I'm curious. We're talking about venture capital. We're talking about building businesses. You are building a business.
Yes.
I've never asked you this question. Have always wanted to. And you don't have to give me like an exact business because I hate when people ask me this, but if you were going to take a step from behind the microphone, from behind the pen, the keyboard, and build a company, first, curious, like if you have a thought around like what direction, like not what is it, but like would it be in infrastructure? Would it be in this? Would it be in that? And also, are there takeaways from the book that you like would be day one things, I guess?
Wow. I mean, immediately so if I wasn't building a media company, like what kind of fintech company would I build? I'm guessing. It's probably because I just wrote about it for my newsletter tonight too, but honestly, I've always been very interested in wealth management. I've always, and now there's like this so wealth management actually just tripled, according to Crunchbase data, just like tripled the amount of funding it got since last year.
Like wealth tech startups?
Wealth techs, yeah. Okay. Like, and I've always found that space interesting because I've been reporting on it for so long. And it's changing, but not quickly, of course not.
Yeah.
But I do think there's something fundamentally interesting about being able to take these vehicles for creating wealth that, you know, the 1% uses, and being able to translate that to more people.
I agree with that.
Is there a way to do that it could work a bit faster, maybe, or a bit like that isn't just like a robo-advisor? I feel like en masse we were like robo-advisors, and then the end. And now you see like these kind of niche companies come up where, you know, they'll focus on like wealth management for certain markets. But I've always found that interesting. God, there's like, you know, there's like AI, but I actually think when I think about 2025, if there's two areas that I actually really want Fintech is Femme to start talking more about, and maybe this is where I would think about building something. I don't know.
There's no. I mean, this is.
I know this is make believe.
Thought experiment. Yeah.
Honestly, is climate fintech, and
what does that mean to you? Because to me, that just sounds like bullshit.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, but like this is. If this was anyone but you, I would not have said that.
Yeah.
But this is you, and every time I have this conversation, it's like, well, we bought carbon credits, so but like, what did that do for the atmosphere?
Right.
Nothing. Did it do something for your balance sheet? Yes.
Right. Well, I think it's like with climate fintech. I think there's a lot of with a lot of climate things. There's a lot of ownership that we put on like the consumer. To change their behavior, when really you need like massive systemic change. The same as with wealth management, right? Where I think we've done the whole invest thing. I think we've gotten that. Like we're like, cool, everyone's investing. Great. Glad we're all investing.
Yeah.
I mean, we're still not.
But we've yelled about it a lot.
We have,
so now
for the
it's
last
time
few
to
years.
yell for
It's
something else.
Been a minute. Exactly. But I've always been interested in climate fintech. I want to learn more about it. I know that there are solutions there that tie largely into investing. There's a company I didn't write about in the book, but I could have in the sequel maybe. That
there you go.
Manifesting. That's called Physis Invest, and their founder Stefania. She's fascinating, but also it basically ties like ESG investing into kind of a larger scale with like institutional investors, complex stuff. Obviously, an area that I'm trying to learn more about. But I would like for it to not be bullshit, because I do think that like the banks, I agree with, because I think a banking product that tells users like, use this plastic credit card, so that way, here's another plastic credit card or debit card, so that way, and every time you swipe it, like magically the 100,000 trees are planted because you use this card. That's like a, is it?
Like honestly, if every time I swipe my card, a tree was getting planted, I would sign up for that bank. But it like that. But companies have tried that, and then the economics don't work out. The first startup that I worked for was called Bloom, and it was a 401k robo advisor where we were gonna try to plant a tree for every single time a user joined.
Yeah.
I think Acorns was literally doing it for a while, and it just got so expensive.
Yeah, it's like, how did the mechanics of that even work out?
I agree. I want it to be a thing too. And every single year we get this question at Money 2020 of like, what's the climate? Like, what are we doing on sustainability content? And I'm like, I don't know. I think you should go to a sustainability show. Like, we're a finance show, and we're a fintech show. And like, the best answer I have to this question at this point is that like Stripe and the Collison brothers being the Collison brothers have like just gotten that company to be so big and so successful that like now Patrick can make sure it keeps going and running and becoming Stripe, but also can, think about these other things. And now they're working on like a carbon capture project, but it's totally unreal. It has nothing to do with like, taking payments online. Right. And so this is where I struggle with the connection, because I feel like we're really trying to greenwash an industry that is inherently ungreenwash. Like, that could actually do a lot of good work, but there's, the whole like individual carbon footprint thing, to your point. Our individual carbon footprints matter nothing compared to the carbon footprint of the average corporation.
Right, exactly. Like, which is why it has to be
commercial. Yes, you said that earlier.
Crazy commercial. So I would say that, and then I don't know. I guess like there's wealth tech, there's climate tech. As you were talking, I'm kind of like crypto isn't a bad. I'm about to spend
like
next
infrastructure or like a coin.
I mean infrastructure, because I'm like, we're about to spend the next 4 years talking about this much heavier than we were the last couple of years since the 2022.
Yeah, like
FTX fallout.
like the actual blockchain piece.
Yeah. Well, because
and the next, now I know what you mean by the next 4 years. Yes, there will be a more crypto-friendly world that we're living in.
Yeah,
I see what you mean now.
Right,
yes.
and so. And it's funny, after I turned in my manuscript and it was already done, something I kind of had wished I'd done more of, but it's all good. She's perfect as is.
Perfect.
In the next book. But I wish I would have touched on crypto more, but I have run out of kind of things to say about it, because...
Well, you have Lule in there, right?
Yeah, no, Lule's in there. And she was actually someone who also came to mind as like even though she's like a great friend and mentor and someone I, have brunch with all the time, she's like
from eToro, by the way.
Yes,
just for context.
I still am very like, oh, you exist.
She is wonderful.
She's
you just
wonderful.
meet people sometimes.
She's someone who, like, when she speaks, I like can't fathom someone just speaking so eloquently and well. It's incredible. I get smarter, right? Like every time she communicates to me.
Yeah.
And that's like the kind of people you want in your life. But she's like tough love too, right? Like heavy on the tough love. I love people at the intersection of crypto and politics. People like Clev Mesidor. She just joined my community. And Lule. So there's something there too. Like I don't even know what I would build in that realm, but all those areas are very interesting to me. I think because if we start talking about crypto now as people with like our heads on straight, then maybe we could actually lead the conversation instead of having like the people currently leading it.
Well, yeah, I very much we would love to have you on stage at any of our shows, Winklevoss Twins. But I do think that it would be helpful to have a diverse group of individuals that are the, spokespeople for that. And I like the Winklevoss for the record and all of that. But can I tell you what I think?
Yes.
In terms of what company you should start if you ever did?
Okay.
So I actually think it's really funny that you said wealth management because my journey has been basically the reverse, where like I started in wealth management and realized that, well, one, like the whole fiduciary versus broker, like you can basically just, if you're a broker dealer, just lie to a client and sell them anything, which is interesting. And that got me angry enough to go like start working in banking, right? And you work in banking and you all of a sudden realize that like, oh, nobody actually has any deposits. So how, like, if there's nothing in your bank account, if you're in your checking account or in your savings account, it becomes really hard to invest in your 401k, your IRA, any of it. And then you spend more time in banking and you realize, oh, it's because of it's America. So everybody's way overloaded with debt, right?
Right.
And then that leads you into this, like, you just keep going down and down and down into like, is it actually just like credit scoring? Like, is the most broken thing that we have, like, at the base of it all, is it?
It's a solid one.
It's where my brain goes is that there is so much. There's been so much work since women have been even given access to credit to try and make sure that there is equal access to credit, but there still is not, right? And like a company, I don't know what it is. And I think that like there's companies out there that are trying to build these alternative credit scoring systems and whatever. But like a Nicole going out and that, I can't think of a single one of those companies that's female founded. One, two, I can't think of a single one of those companies that like is actually taking that as a priority versus like most of them are, which is for the record, like equally whatever important. I'm not trying to qualify, but it's like you're coming from the Philippines to the US and, how do you take your credit from there to here if you're going to become a citizen here, right? Like, and that's a very valid problem to solve because you're all of a sudden underbanked, but there's still Americans that have this problem. Anyways, I get passionate about this and I could see you being a person to solve it.
That's a great, thank you. Manifesting here.
That's what we do.
I think that's a great idea. I agree.
I don't know what the idea was really. I just think you should
trying
do something.
To figure out.
You should do something.
I mean, there was like an idea
eventually.
in there. There's a kernel of an idea.
Yeah, it was a seed. A definite seed.
As like an old editor
one.
would tell me, Nicole, that's a kernel of a story. Let's build that out. Back when I was a cub, they used to call me.
Anyways, I think
like this idea.
There's a world there.
Because it's true. At the end of the day, the current way we determine if someone is worthy of borrowing money sucks. Basically, your options are be in debt. Yeah.
I mean, that is the option. And then
there's only like a small form of that. It's like you either have a mortgage or an auto pay or a car or credit cards.
And we have a system that incentivizes you to go into a certain amount of debt, but not too much. And then if you're in none, it disincentivizes. It's like the system is designed in a way inherently policy-wise from the tech. All of it needs literally. I think I sat in this room for an episode of Fintech Family Hour. Not everything is fintech, and had like an hour and a half conversation with Alex Johnson about this. And like we got through, I think maybe 0.1% of the complexity of it. Like it is. Anyways, it fascinates me because it's like if we solve the base layers of these things, like all of a sudden wealth management, like we don't need magical technology in wealth management because people actually have money to invest. Right.
Yeah. I mean, and I think this is what we're seeing in other countries, right? That have to have alternative ways of scoring consumers because their consumers start off with not even having an identity, right? Like that is optional in India. Right. Or
UPI was a galactic step forward. Right.
Yeah. Right. So anyway, but those are I love that idea. I mean, there is one founder that I can think of that is working on it, and she's an immigrant from South Korea, Chrissy Kim of Tomo Credit. But not that's it. Yeah. So it seems pretty, considering how many wealth management
and I talked
founders I could think of off the top of my head.
Exactly. And I talked to Christy back when I was at Bond 3-4 years ago, and like that was the last conversation I had with her. But she basically was like, "Yeah, this is my 400th call of the day being told no," like, and it's just like it's just hard. It's just especially hard. So we have some minutes left. Let's get back to the book.
Yes.
In terms of the question that I asked, and then we went down the rabbit hole. Yeah, let's.
I was like,
just both Vanna White towards it. Here, let's see. Hold her up.
There you go. This is great advertising for me. Thank you. My publisher will be very thrilled.
There you go. I got you. Key takeaways, which is like something when people ask me key takeaways from any like gigantic thing, I kind of get annoyed. But
right.
What do you got? Like, what are the biggest things you learned, or what are the biggest things that pissed you off?
Oh, yeah. I would say something, because writing the book was not only me having a lot of, revelations for my audience, but for myself as an entrepreneur. I would say one of my key takeaways is that the women in this book realized that it wasn't about questioning themselves. It was about questioning the system. That can really save you a lot of time, energy. Understanding that there's a section in the book where I talk about imposter syndrome's origins and why it's not real. It is a fake, made up thing that if we can just, especially as women, but we all feel imposter syndrome, this fake thing. But if we can remove all the energy it takes to work through that, then we can kind of go back to focusing on building the businesses that we need to and the things we need to do. And not necessarily something to piss me off, but I guess, like having a lot of entrepreneurial lessons myself through writing this book. Things like, there's a massive section largely with Asia Bradley, who's an angel investor and multi-exited founder and bad bitch extraordinaire. But her teaching me and then me teaching people through the book, really just how abundance works. And man, I guess this could piss me off, because at the beginning of this year, I really thought that shit was foo-foo. I really thought that was bullshit. I was like, you're telling me, I just start to like tell the money in my bank account, oh my God, I'm so grateful for you. And then she grows and oh my God, that shit works. Like it really does. The minute you start to lower the bar on yourself, everyone's going to start lowering the bar on you back. So, and I learned this from, not in the book, but do you know Hans Sakar from Q2 Helix?
Yeah.
Embedded Finance. Yeah. Anyways, he's great. Love him. He should be in the next book. But anyways, I was meeting with him at Money 2020, and he was telling me, I love what he said, because he was like, you create your floor. Like the lowest barrier of entry for someone to be able to work with you, you set that price point. And that's it. Like, so
you and I have had this conversation before too.
Yeah. Be very mindful of what that price point is. Because I know what we do as entrepreneurs, or as people in general, right? We want to shape shift and mix and switch and code ourselves to make people, to make the masses like us, or make anyone like us. And, that really isn't the answer. The answer is to like double down on who you are, to double down on, I think if this last few years was like the era of authenticity, I think the next few years is actually going to be more around relatability. And it's a lot more relatable to be honest about things, me thinking abundance was bullshit and then realizing it's not, right? Yeah. Like realizing, when I'm not cheap on myself, all of a sudden others are going to pay me more. All of a sudden others are going to treat me different. People are going to look at me different. I would say that is a key lesson that I really want women to like stop thinking they're a problem. I'm like trying to like even rid myself of phrases even when I'm writing my newsletter, and I'm sure there's phrases of it in the book, but like, women have this challenge, or like this barrier, or like, and it's like there's literally nothing wrong with women. Women are awesome. But there's things wrong with the structures around us. The system and the structure.
Yeah, I mean,
and that's really what we have.
You just got access to credit, like again.
Yeah,
like,
right.
It's insane.
That's what you have.
It was in the 70s.
In the 70s.
It was recent. Come on, folks.
Exactly. So that's what you have to like think more about. I think So just saving, to me, that's like one of the biggest takeaways is just how much time and energy and how much further we can go when we just like rid ourselves of these narratives that simply aren't real. And that's really what the book did for me. And then it also taught me the power of, and Asya says this, but give generously and give often.
Mm-hmm.
That, like I said, also things I really thought were like foo-foo things. These are real. When you do this in business, when you do this as an entrepreneur, when you do this as, you know, whatever it is, even if you're not a founder and entrepreneur, I like to say you're a founder of your own career and your own story.
100%.
So you always are a founder in some capacity.
Yeah.
And you should treat your career like such. Like, I think everyone should be a bit more entrepreneurial. I wish I would have known this when I was younger. But
that's why you're doing what you're doing now.
This is why we didn't make Forbes under 30, you know?
Had we known.
It's all right. It's all right. We took till 30 to start to understand this. Anyway, my long answer to say that don't question yourself, question the system. And then so much clarity comes along with that.
I think that is a wonderful and actually wildly relatable place to end, because I think male, female, like no matter gender identity, race, like whatever species you might choose to be at the moment, like the idea of stepping into the world of financial services, not financial technology, but stepping in the world of financial services, the incumbent version, and looking at the way things work, pulling them apart and building them in a better way. Like, that's how this whole thing started. And I feel like we're like restarting that whole thing again right now, where we're looking at the problems again for the first time and like doing it all again. So
yes,
I'm with you. I love it. Let's go relate to some other things. Let's not
spend the rest of the next few years being relatable. No, I mean, I agree. And I think we're at, the chapter 1 of my book is called What the Fintech. And that's a very, if you know, you know. And, you know, the real fans would know what that is. And I told you this at the bar when I was still writing it. Yeah. But when I was researching for the book, I had to identify the pattern of how fintech had its like emergence, and it happened through, you know, let's just start with the 3 decades I've been alive, and that's, the financial crisis of 2008. Fintech emerges from there. Women like Amy Aokis, founder and CEO of Anthemis, emerged from that. Even women like Margaret Hardigan, Marstone, you know, all of these fintech companies.
I miss Margaret. I haven't seen her in like 4
She
years.
is so awesome.
Yeah,
I love her.
Shouts
and she's
to
so
Margaret.
funny. Anyway, love her. She's in my community too. Woo. Anyway, so, but you had this innovation that does emerge from these fallouts. Yeah. Because that's what happens, right? Necessity breeds innovation. And so that's what we're going to see. And then COVID happened. Same thing, right? Then you see this new emergence of founders who come out because they're pissed about how things happened and how the fallout of the economy happened in COVID. So, you know, your next 10 years. So now what's the next thing going to be? I mean, based on the pattern of how things have been going and based on what is going to happen with this, you know, next administration, if we can just look to history of what's typically happened, we know it's like inevitable. We know that some sort of crisis is probably going to happen. I almost see it, and it's almost like this thing that we needed. Like, it's like the regression we needed to accelerate faster than ever before.
Well, it's a cycle.
It is a cycle. So who is going to be? What is that next wave of innovation going to look like? That's what we're going to have to pay attention to, and who's going to be ready to emerge from those ashes is what
we will find out. And it really is one of the most exciting times to start a fintech business, I think. Yeah. And also, in my personal opinion, one of the most exciting times to read a book on the subject of fintech specifically.
Isn't it?
Called Fintech Feminists, written by Nicole Casperson, that we'll have in the show notes. Nicole, thank you.
Thank you.
You're the best. Talk soon.
To our live audience. Yeah.
Thank you.